Welcome everyone, and we apologize for starting a few minutes late. We're having some technical difficulties, but hopefully we have ironed them out. My name is Kate Collin, and I'm so happy to have this opportunity to speak with you this evening as well as with everyone that's on the screen. I want to especially thank San Rafael Schools for their willingness to co-host tonight's event, although it will be the city that's providing the information this evening. We really appreciate the support of Superintendent Diaz-Geisel, as well as Davidson Middle School Principal Michael Stachin. And Principal Stachin is on the screen, and I'm going to turn it over to you just to say a few words before we get started.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kate. Thank you guys for hosting this. As you know, we get a lot of questions from families about the homeless situation around our school. And so I'm glad that we're able to partner and talk about how we can keep our children safe coming to and from campus while supporting our community at the same time. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. So before we get started, I echo what the principal just said. We want to thank everyone who's tuning in to learn more about this complex issue of homelessness and encampments. We have received, like the principal has, we have received many emails and calls, and I can assure you that the City Council and our staff, everyone on the screen, and the folks actually not on the screen, but working for the city, we hear you, we share in your frustration, and we recognize a deep concern around the safety of our children. So tonight, I have with me this evening, we'll go to the next. Tonight I have with me this evening our City Manager, Christina Lilovich, Assistant City Manager, John Stefanski, Assistant City Attorney Genevieve Coyle, and Police Chief Dave Spiller. There are going to be three parts to tonight's session. First, the team will address the question of why. Why is this happening here? Second, we'll provide clarity as to what the city can and cannot do. And lastly, we'll address some of the frequently asked questions we've received from the community in recent weeks. So again, thank you for being here. I hope you find this very informative. I will now turn it over to John Stefanski. We'll talk about how Zoom and other important details for this evening. John.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Kay. Good evening, everyone. Just want to remind everyone that we have Spanish translation is available on the Zoom on the Spanish channel, which the instructions on the screen will show you how to get to that. A couple other housekeeping items is that we will be recording this on Zoom, and we'll make a copy of the video available on the city's website at the link on the slide. That's the city's homelessness website. In addition, we have a number of questions that we received from the public that we're prepared to answer tonight. If you have additional questions, please utilize the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions. And while we may not be able to answer all of these live tonight, we will be taking these questions and we'll provide answers through an FAQ that we'll share with the principal as well as we'll put on our website. And so additionally, if you have questions after this webinar that you want to ask the city, you can email those to city.manager@thecityofsanrafael.org. And the questions that are received by the end of this week will be included in that FAQ. And so with that, I'll now hand it over to our city manager, Christina Lilovich, to give a brief overview of the situation that the city's facing regarding homelessness. Christine.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mayor Kate. Thank you to the schools, Michael, and to the superintendent for having us tonight. This is a huge challenge that we're facing as a community together, and it's not a problem that's unique to San Rafael. This is really a national problem, and there's some things that we're going to talk about tonight to try to inform you about some of the challenges that we face as a local government in addressing them. At the federal level, we're going to talk a little bit about Martin versus Boise and that federal case and how that's impacting us locally here in San Rafael. We do have a significantly increased homeless population, as we all know, due to lack of affordable housing and a number of other factors. We are partnering with Marin County, who really is the provider of health and social services in the county to provide lots of support to folks that are experiencing homelessness. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. And then our assistant city attorney is going to get into some of the details about the local ordinances, the lawsuit that we're facing, and a new approach that we've tried, that we're in the process of fighting to be able to implement to reduce the impacts of these encampments on the community. So next slide. At the federal level, I talked about Martin versus Boise. This decision came down in 2018. And it is really significantly limiting what the city can do as it relates to enforcing our local laws. So what Martin versus Boise did is it said that cities cannot criminalize people who are experiencing homelessness for sleeping on public property if no shelter options are available. And that last part of that sentence is what's critical to us here in Marin County as a really significant challenge, is we don't have enough shelter, alternative shelter, interim housing options available in order for this constitutional law that essentially, because we don't have that housing, the courts have deemed this a criminal action for us to not allow the sleeping and camping on public property. So John, next slide, please. Just to clarify about Boise a little bit, this is a Ninth Circuit decision. And so it's not just affecting us here locally or regionally, it's the whole Western United States. And we're talking of course, with our peers up and down the state and all over the country about what sort of solutions they're working on. And there's a lot of creative ideas about that. We're not alone in this problem. I want to bring it locally here, like what's happening here in Marin. The County of Marin really is the largest funder and supporter of social and health and human services related to the programs that are out there to support individuals experiencing homelessness. If you look at the numbers, just to give you a sense of where we've been in context of the problem, there's a point in time count that's done every couple of years. In 2015, the number was 1,309 individuals in Marin County experiencing homelessness. You see that number start to come down. We made some progress. As everyone knows, COVID hit, the pandemic affected this population. And we are now experiencing an uptick in more individuals dealing with this really significant hardship. So the most recent point in time count was 1,122 individuals. About 350 of those are in the city of San Rafael. And let's see. So again, I want to talk a little bit about the partnership with the county, and that, when I was talking about Boise versus Idaho and why we struggle with the ability to provide alternative shelter, is the county funds and runs 160 shelter beds. They work alongside of us and other jurisdictions toward developing units of permanent supportive housing, which is really the long-term solution to keep individuals housed with services and support so they can remain housed over the long term. We're looking right now with the county at a partnership about how to address the lack of available shelter. There are solutions we're exploring, including sanctioned camping areas, non-congregate shelter options. We've been exploring the idea of tiny homes. The challenge that we face here regionally is finding an appropriate location. We have a really significant lack of ongoing funding available to the region and specifically to the city of San Rafael. The order of magnitude of costs to build, develop, and maintain and operate these types of facilities and these interim housing solutions is extremely, extremely expensive. And so I just want to reassure all of you that we are working diligently. As Mayor Kate mentioned, there's many staff individuals that work for both the city and the county that are working on this literally night and day. So next slide. Yeah, about half of America's unsheltered individuals live in California. So about 170,000 people. And, the reasons maybe are obvious, but they are really huge societal problems that don't have easy solutions. The cost of these permanent supportive housing units are upwards to $900,000 a unit to develop and build and bring online. And I'm going to talk later after we talk a little bit more about the legal stuff about what else the city has been doing in this space. And I want to reiterate something that Mayor Kate said, that we are working really hard to strike a balance between making sure we are adhering to the law. That is our obligation, and to protect the community and the access to public parks and recreational spaces, and also make sure that those experiencing homelessness who really don't have anywhere else to go right now, as we continue to try to build and bring on alternative shelter. Our aspirational goal is to end homelessness, and the only way we're going to do that is through regional collaboration and partnerships. And that extends to our community-based partners, our nonprofits, our health and human services partners. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more after. I'm going to turn it over right now to Assistant City Attorney Genevieve Coyle, who's going to give you some context to our legal issues and the city's positions on those.
Great. Thank you, Christine, and good evening, everyone. So as Christine explained, the Martin v. Boise decision, which came down in 2018, really dramatically changed the landscape with regard to enforcing camping laws on public property. And what that court decision said is that the city must allow persons without shelter to sleep on public property. However, that law does allow us to regulate the time, place, and manner of camping on public property. Unfortunately, this also has been very challenging, as we, along with many other cities, have been consistently faced with lawsuits. In fact, we have enforced our regulations on the city's encampments, and we've been sued every time that we've done this. So I want to give you just a quick overview of the history of the lawsuits. We've had 5 lawsuits to date that have been filed against the city. 2 of those we are actively litigating right now. The first was filed against the city during COVID. And this lawsuit was about the establishment of the city's service support area, or SSA, which was located underneath the Highway 101 overpass on Caltrans property. And the SSA provided a designated space for camping with security, restrooms, and services that were available to the individuals living in the encampment. The SSA served 56 unhoused individuals, and that was over the course of the 1 year that the SSA was in operation. And 42 of those individuals are currently in housing today and no longer homeless. Despite these successes, however, the city was sued by a homeless person living in the SSA for setting up and operating the SSA. When Caltrans closed the SSA because it was located on their property, the city was sued a second time. This time it was filed by several persons who had been living in the SSA. And this time we were sued for closing the SSA encampment. And in that case, the court issued what's called a temporary restraining order. And that order delayed the closing by over 1 month, but eventually we were permitted by the courts to close the site. After the SSA was closed, homeless individuals then established an encampment in Albert Park. And this encampment was adjacent to our community center, ball fields and playgrounds. I'm sure many, if not all of you in the community, experienced and observed the encampment in that area. And when the city closed Albert Park to camping earlier this year, several homeless persons who were living in the encampment sued the city. The court in that case also issued a temporary restraining order, which prevented the city from closing the site for over a 1 month period. In mid-summer then of this year, the city also closed an encampment at the Menzies parking lot. This is the parking lot that serves the Falkirk Cultural Center. The city decided to close that after an attempted arson and a shooting at that encampment. One person living at that encampment has sued the city, and the court issued a temporary restraining order in that case, which is still in effect. We are actively litigating this fourth lawsuit, and we're prevented by the court from clearing this one campsite that remains at that area. And most recently, 2 months ago, the city was sued again. This is our fifth lawsuit with regard to enforcement of our camping laws. We've been sued by over a dozen persons who are living at the Mahone Creek Path and the surrounding area, as well as a homeless union. The types of claims that are brought against the city in these lawsuits, they include cruel and unusual punishment under the 8th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, illegal confiscation of personal property, state-created danger theories, and some claims under the Americans with Disabilities Act. We are vigorously defending these lawsuits in federal court. We're going to speak to this encampment shortly, as this is why I know we're here tonight. But I think it's important for you all to have this larger legal context and backdrop, just to understand kind of how challenging the legal landscape is when it comes to enforcing camping laws. So what we've learned over the last 5 years since the Boise decision came down is that as a city, we have limited tools in our toolbox to enforce our camping laws on public property. The federal court decisions have really severely curbed our ability to enforce our laws in this area. Our experience has been that when the city is finally permitted by the federal courts to clear an encampment, new unregulated encampments pop up in other public spaces and parks throughout the city. So this summer, after experiencing the growth of the new encampment on the Mahone Creek Path, the city council decided to adopt a new regulation, which regulates the time, place, and manner of camping in the city. And this is a new spacing and density ordinance. And the basic rules of the new ordinance are that campsites, individual campsites, are restricted to a size of no more than 10 by 10 feet or 100 square feet for one person. And if multiple persons are camping together at the same location, then they can expand their campsite to 200 square feet. This includes all personal belongings and property. And this provision of the regulation is really intended to curb and limit kind of the size of a space that one person kind of can occupy on public property, including all of their personal belongings. And then also, each campsite must be separated from the next campsite by 200 feet. There's some other distancing rules in the ordinance, including a provision that no campsite can be located within 100 feet of a playground. So this ordinance allows camping in the city by unhoused persons. We are legally required to do this under Martin v. Boise. But enforcement of this new ordinance, if it is allowed by the court, should end the proliferation of the unregulated large encampments that we've been experiencing in the city. So this includes the current encampment that's at the Mahone Creek Path and neighboring areas on Anderson Boulevard and West Francisco Boulevard and Lindaro Streets. The history of this ordinance is that the council passed it in July of this year, and it was set to go into effect in mid-August. Prior to that date, the city performed outreach events to the homeless community to educate them about the new ordinance and to prepare them for the new rules and to work with each of them to kind of get into compliance with the new distancing and spacing rules. However, we were sued 3 work days before we could enforce the new ordinance. The lawsuit was filed by over a dozen campers or individuals camping on the Mahone Creek Path and a homeless union. They initiated this lawsuit in federal district court, and they are challenging the legality of our ordinance. As in the prior cases, the judge immediately issued a temporary restraining order, which blocks the city from enforcing the ordinance temporarily until further review of the court. So since the TRO was issued by the court, we've had 3 court hearings in that case. We've submitted multiple legal filings, and we are still awaiting a ruling from the court. So the temporary restraining order at this point has been in effect for over 2 months. And that order does prevent the city at this time from enforcing our camping laws on the existing encampment until the court essentially says that we can go ahead and enforce it. But we certainly have not kind of paused our larger work to continue, finding solutions and housing for individuals facing homelessness. And so with that, I will pass it back to Christine to discuss this further.
Thank you, Genevieve. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the city has been doing since 2017 in order to resolve homelessness. Pardon me, hold on one second. So in addition to the partnerships that I mentioned with the County of Marin, there's some key service providers, including St. Vincent de Paul, Homeward Bound of Marin, Ritter Center, who we work with on a regular basis to kind of uplift those that are facing homelessness. The city's put a lot of time and energy and resources into trying to solve this problem. We have a cannabis tax revenue that's funding a SAFE team, Specialized Assistance for Everyone, which is a mobile mental health team. It's a 3-year alternative response pilot. That's about $775,000 a year. And it's been a really effective way to respond to calls for service instead of the police department for those who are having a mental health crisis. I wanted to share that number, that phone number, which is available to all individuals in San Rafael, housed or unhoused. That number is 415-458-SAFE, which is 7233. And the city and county have been funding mobile showers and laundry services for a number of years. The city council contributed $2.1 million from our Affordable Housing Trust Fund to help fund the transformational property over at 3301 Kerner Boulevard into permanent supportive housing through the state's Project Home Key initiative. That initiative resulted in 44 units of permanent supportive housing. The city has also dedicated $1.1 million of that Affordable Housing Trust Fund money to Jonathan's Place, which is a project by Homeward Bound, providing 40 permanent supportive housing units and 32 emergency shelter beds at 190 Mill Street. We also fund the Downtown Streets team, which is a great partner who provides opportunities for currently and formerly unhoused individuals that help clean up our downtown area while working on their long-term self-sufficiency. Since 2017, in our partnership and alliance with the county and other local providers, our system of care has successfully housed hundreds of the most at-risk individuals who are facing long-term homelessness. Just as an aside, this week, case managers from St. Vincent de Paul successfully housed 3 individuals who were formerly camping along the Mahone Creek Path. So I want to speak a little bit to what actions we're taking and have been taking to address the impacts of the encampments along Mahone Creek Path, Lindaro, and Anderson. These are some specific things that we're doing to try to address those impacts. We do have dedicated SAFE team members there in the morning hours for walking to school and after school. We've hired an additional contractor who's doing trash and cleanup and pickup. That's been ongoing, but we're increasing the number of days and services to try to help reduce the impact. We are taking some enforcement action. We're looking at some of the local laws and ordinances that we can enforce unrelated to Boise versus Idaho, and our new spacing ordinance to remove wooden pallet shelters that have a fire risk, in addition to where folks might be illegally tying into electrical infrastructure for reducing fire hazards. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that we are in the process of looking at having some Barbier security guard in addition to the safe team along the path, just to provide some additional assurances for safety for those concerned about public safety along the path. And lastly, there are some other legal remedies that we are with our legal team are considering for how do we contain the growth of these encampments to ensure that they don't continue to grow as we, as Genevieve said, as we're fighting this this legal challenge and trying to do everything we can to increase these tools in our toolbox to keep everybody safe. So who am I turning it over to? John?
Back to me.
Okay.
Yes. So as we mentioned at the top of the presentation, that we had a number of questions that we at the city have received from folks in the community around this situation. And so we've taken these and are prepared to answer them. And so our first question will be going to you, Christine, which is these encampments are near Davidson Middle School. And there must be a remedy to remove them, as school children must walk by them to get to school. I simply cannot believe that the safety of children is not a priority for our city.
Yeah, so I mean, our kids are a super high priority for safety. And I just want to say, as a mama for myself, I think about this a lot. And I really feel for you and the challenge that we face together. I mentioned before that we've got the safe team on board, and they are there. I mean, the kids along the path, those of your kids that have cell phones can program that number into their phone. And if there's any concern that those safe team members are somewhere along that path trying to make sure that everybody feels safe and has access to support if needed. And in addition, getting some security guard presence there for some just additional feelings for safety. And yeah, I mean, I think that part of the reason we're here and what we're trying to do tonight is offer you some reassurances and provide some good information about, again, the things we can and that we just simply can't do. We can't break the law, and that would result in kind of a criminal legal action against the city and individuals. That's just something we can't put at risk.
All right, thank you, Christine. Our next question is going to be for you, Chief Spiller. I see open drug use. What will the city do to prevent this from happening?
Yeah, so we continue to have a presence in this area. Our staff is very proactive, and we continue to monitor issues that are going on. I always recommend community members just call the PD when you see something like of this nature or any type of criminal activity. Our police officers will respond, will observe, and will investigate. In some cases, our officers will be able to take enforcement action unless they're unable to, find or substantiate the illegal behavior. At any given time, the police department is managing multiple calls for service, and all of our calls are prioritized. So, given the fact that we're already out there, given the fact that we're paying attention to this area throughout the day and into the evening hours, if somebody sees something, please say something. We're very happy to respond and try to address the issue, not only from a criminal perspective, but also from the perspective of providing individuals resources or support. Our police officers, including our homeless outreach team members, our mental health outreach provider, even the safe team can connect substance abusers or drug users with substance abuse prevention services. So if you see something, say something. We're happy to respond.
All right, thank you, Chief. The third question we have is that the encampments are filthy with human trash and waste. Why doesn't the city use its health and safety code to remove the debris? And we'll go back to you, Christine, on this one.
Sure. So the city's municipal code does prohibit littering in public places. So the city can issue citations, but there are some constraints at this time on this enforcement by the pending federal court action. And this is a complicated area of the law where Boise versus Boise's that decision. We cannot remove people's personal belongings from their camping site, even if they appear to be litter or debris. If the individual camping in their location claims that as their personal property, we are not able to remove or cite them for those things. Like I mentioned in the presentation, we have hired additional contractors to do additional trash pickup and cleaning. And I would encourage you, if you have concerns, to report them to the city through that's the city manager's office email that's in the presentation. I do also want to reassure everyone that we are looking closely at making sure all pedestrian access is available, that there aren't any belongings or litter impeding in the for a safe path of travel for the kids back and forth from school. So the folks that are out on the path, making sure that the area is clear and safe in that regard.
All right, thank you, Christine. Our fourth question here is that it seems like every day there are more tents. What will the city do to stop the spreading of encampments towards the school? I think we'll go back to you, Christine.
Sure. So as we're working on this spacing and density ordinance, which would again reduce the concentration if we are allowed to enforce it, so that we don't have these large encampments of 30, 40 plus people. We are in a holding pattern until the court proceedings finalize. And in the meantime, like I said, we're looking at some other legal remedies to make sure that the encampment doesn't grow. We are going to be providing regular updates to the community. This is changing from week to week. And as soon as we have new information about the legal remedies that are available to the city, we will provide updates. There's a homelessness newsletter that you can sign up for on the city's website to get automatic updates. And we will continue to push out as much information as soon as it becomes available to the community.
All right, thank you, Christine. Our next question is that there are big structures made of pallets. How can that be legal and allowed by the city? I think back to you, Christine.
Sure. Well, they're not legal. We do have the ability to, and we are commencing a process to cite and remove those structures and replace them with tents to try to clean up some of those sites. There's some fire risk posed by the wooden pallets and the structures that are being constructed out there. So we are in a process real time in a matter of days and weeks to address those individual case by individual case.
All right, our next question here. What can I do to help the homeless? I don't like the encampments, but also want to help.
Yeah, there's a lot of great agencies out there. Like I said, our partners who appreciate donations and volunteerism. So just to name a few, Homeward Bound of Marin operates 353 units of permanent supportive housing. St. Vincent's de Paul has been here since 1946. And as many of you know, they have a free dining room on B Street and appreciate volunteers there. The Downtown Streets team, Ritter Center, who's also the primary healthcare provider for those experiencing homelessness. So the best way really to help is to, reach out to those agencies and see what you can do as an individual to help out. Thanks for the question.
All right, our next question is going to you, Genevieve. What would happen if the city defied the federal court order and removed the encampment?
So the city could be held in contempt of court. That is a very serious offense that results in fines or even imprisonment of city officials. So while we do not agree with the court's current order, and we believe that our ordinance is legal and constitutional, we will not be defying a court order. That said, we are continuing to vigorously defend our laws in court, but we will have to follow the court's appeal process in any challenge that we want to bring against the court's orders.
Great, thank you, Genevieve. Chief, I think this next one's for you. So what should I do if a camper yells at, threatens, or harasses me or my children when we walk by? It's a scary experience for me and my child, and I want the city to help us feel safe.
Yeah, great question. So call, I first of all, if you find yourself in this situation, first and foremost, I always recommend you get yourself to a safe place so you can let us know about what's going on. Community members are, as I previously shared, always encouraged to call the police department, let us know, report this type of activity. We're highly likely in the area, we can get there quickly, but we need to know. So our officers will respond, they'll investigate and determine if a crime has occurred. If an officer who comes out, for example, determines probable cause, they can effect an arrest or cite the individual, but we will take action. In some cases, if it's an individual who's experiencing a mental health crisis, we can, again, leverage our resources. We can use the SAFE team to provide support to the individual who's experiencing that crisis. But that's a great question. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
John,
Yeah.
just so you know, on the snake path, or I guess the Mahone Creek path, we call it the snake path or the wiggle. We've told our students not to travel on that part. It is hard to enforce that with some of our kids, but we've asked them to go around, and we sometimes place security at the bridge so that we ask them to go around the Marine Bio building. The encampment that's on Lindaro, that's closer to our school, that's kind of grown in the last couple of weeks. We have a security staff that's stationed there now in the morning and after school, and all of our kids on campus know who those security guards are. So they're there. If anybody feels unsafe, you'll see either John or Etienne. They're wearing their red staff necklace, so you can spot them if you don't know them, and they're there to make sure our kids are safe with that.
All right.
John,
Thank you so much.
Can I add one more thing? It's
Yeah.
actually in the chat, but we often hear this question in the community: when should I call 911? When should I call via the non-emergency or the business number? If you're in danger or if you're in doubt, you can call 911. Our dispatchers are always available and will be able to receive a service call at that number. But if you have found yourself to a safe place where you can make the call and you have the few minutes, then our non-emergency line is 485-3000, 485-3000, and dispatcher or call taker can immediately format that call for service and get officers responding.
Great. All right. Thank you both. Our next question here is, where are all these homeless people coming from? Why don't we stop providing services to them so they will leave San Rafael? Christine.
Thanks, John. So we've got some real data around where those individuals that are currently unhoused in Marin County and in San Rafael. The vast majority of them are long-term or were long-term house residents in Marin County. Our system of care conducts studies and asks this question, and just generally across California communities in the state, we consistently find that between 75% and 90% of homeless individuals remain like in the immediate area where they became homeless. So there are cases of homeless that migrate, between communities, but that is not the majority of individuals. Communities across California have more homelessness because of the critical shortage of affordable housing and over decades of time, and the lack of available funding to support mental health that's really needed to support this population. And we've got the vast majority of the problem. That's the answer to the question about where are they coming from. They're from here, most of them.
All right, and then our last question that we have time for, Christine, is how is the county helping the city resolve this issue as they have more resources and capacity?
I mentioned earlier in the presentation that the city and county have been partnering for the last 10 years and more recently are actively working toward trying to find a solution to the critical shortage of available alternative shelter options for the unhoused, specifically in San Rafael. City government is not set up and funded to receive health and human services dollars directly. And unfortunately, we don't have an ongoing revenue source that supports the creation at the cost and expense that alternative shelter really costs. So we are really relying on our regional partners to develop a sustainable long-term solution with the county.
All right, so that concludes the questions that we have for this evening. And now we'll hand it back over to you, Mayor Kate, to close us out.
Thank you. So everyone listening in has heard a lot of information tonight, and I know we all want that simple and easy fix, and that was not what was being provided. So we share that frustration. It's complex, and there's a lot of aspects to the solution. As we've mentioned, this webinar has been recorded. We know there are additional frequently asked questions that are coming through. We're going to answer them. They'll be put up on the city website. And as the city manager, Lilovich, mentioned already, if you want to receive updates, go to the city website and sign up for the newsletter so you'll know when new information is coming out. We'll keep our fingers crossed that we'll get a favorable judgment from the federal court judge, but that remains to be seen. And we really hope that all of you better understand and we're able to provide the understanding of why San Rafael has these challenges and recognize that it's not unique what's happening here as it exists in many California cities. Everyone on the screen and the people behind the scenes, we're going to keep working with the county, who's our closest government agency that really can help us with capacity and funding, as well as our state elected officials. We always encourage you to reach out to them as well. We're in this together. San Rafael simply cannot be successful. We cannot be successful if we don't have the county and the state assisting us in these endeavors. I want to thank the schools. Davidson, Principal Stachin, thank you for reaching out to us. We share the deep desire to have our students feel safe as they're walking to school, and we'll continue this partnership and continue to work together. And by having you here, it really demonstrates to the community that we're doing this together. So really, in closing, as a city, as a community, it is a together time. We have to keep striving to uphold the community standards. We talked about that, some of the trash and the pallets. And I hope as humans, we maintain our compassion and our understanding of the complexities involved. And I really believe this together, we're going to keep navigating this issue with sensitivity and diligence. We appreciate you tuning in tonight or taking the time to watch the recording. And we really welcome and appreciate your support as we work as a community to enable folks to go from our streets into housing and ultimately have the vision of no encampments in our community. So that's what we're all working towards. So with that, thank you, team. Thank you, everyone. We'll conclude the webinar and feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions. Thank you. Bye.